Commander Zaxon Krell stood 8 feet tall and looked like someone had crossed a rhinoceros with a particularly angry bodybuilder. His charcoal gray skin rippled with muscle, and his forearms moved with the fluid precision of a born warrior. The other cadets at the Galactic Military Academy gave him a wide berth as he strutted through the corridors, which was exactly how Zaxon liked it. Another perfect score, he announced to no one in particular, waving his latest combat simulation results in the air. 47 consecutive victories. Not that anyone's counting. Well, Zaxon was definitely counting. He'd been counting since day one at the Academy, when he'd arrived from the warrior planet Vorthak with the singular mission of proving that his species was superior to every other pathetic life form in the galaxy. So far, the evidence was pretty compelling. The Academy's main corridor buzzed with the usual mix of species. There were the insectoid klaxons with their twitchy antennae, the gelatinous blobians who left slight slime trails wherever they went, and the bird-like Phetherians who couldn't stop preening their colorful plumage. All of them stopped their conversations when Zaxon passed, which he interpreted as the respect he so obviously deserved. "Hey, Zaxon," called out Kurix, a nervous klaxon who'd made the mistake of trying to befriend the Vorthak warrior weeks ago. "Heard you demolished the advanced tactical scenario yesterday. Impressive stuff." Zaxon turned his massive head toward the insectoid, his yellow eyes narrowing. "Impressive? Kreerex, my friend, that simulation was designed for senior cadets. I completed it in 12 minutes. The previous record was 43 minutes, set by a graduate who now commands a battlecruiser." He flexed his lower arms for emphasis. "I'm not impressive. I'm inevitable." The other students exchanged glances that Zaxon chose to interpret as awe rather than the mild irritation they actually were. Truth was, most of the Academy had grown tired of Zaxon's constant bragging, but nobody wanted to be the one to tell a 4-armed killing machine to tone it down. Besides, Zaxon continued, warming to his favorite topic, "What did you expect? The Vorthak have been perfecting the art of war for millennia. We're bred for combat, trained from birth, and genetically superior to every other species in the known galaxy. It's not boasting if it's simply fact." A green-skinned Zentaurian named Vex rolled her 3 eyes. "Right, because humility is definitely a warrior's virtue." Zaxon's forearms crossed simultaneously, a gesture that looked both impressive and slightly ridiculous. "Mock me all you want, Vex, but when the graduation rankings are announced, there will be exactly 0 surprises about who's at the top. And when I'm commanding fleets while you're all still trying to figure out which end of a plasma rifle to hold, remember this conversation." The group was saved from further Zaxon-induced eye strain by the arrival of Academy Commandant Thorn, a stern-looking human who'd somehow managed to earn the respect of every species at the Academy through sheer competence and an impressive ability to make anyone feel small with just a look. "Attention, cadets," Thorn announced, his voice carrying that particular authority that made everyone straighten up whether they had spines or not. "We have a new exchange student arriving tomorrow. She's from Earth, part of the Human Integration Program." Zaxon's laugh was about as subtle as a plasma cannon. "A human? Here? What's next, Commandant? Are we going to start accepting houseplants?" "The human species has requested representation at the Academy," Thorn replied coolly. "They've been accepted into the Galactic Council, which means they get the same opportunities as everyone else. I trust that's not a problem for anyone?" The way Thorn said it made it clear that having a problem with it would be a problem for whoever was having the problem. But Zaxon was too caught up in his own superiority to pick up on the warning. "Of course not, sir," Zaxon said with mock sincerity. "I'm sure we'll all learn a lot from watching a member of the galaxy's most fragile species attempt military training. It should be educational. For comedy purposes, if nothing else." As the group dispersed, Zaxon couldn't help but grin. A human at the Academy? This was going to be even more entertaining than he'd expected. Everyone knew humans were the galaxy's designated prey species, soft-bodied weaklings who'd somehow stumbled into space travel through pure luck. Having one here would be like bringing a butterfly to a war zone. Tomorrow was going to be a very good day. Riley Thompson did not look like she belonged at the most prestigious military academy in the galaxy. She was about 5.5 feet tall, had brown hair that seemed determined to escape whatever she'd done to it that morning, and was carrying what appeared to be a cat carrier. An actual cat carrier. "This is her," Zaxon whispered to Curex as they watched the human girl stumble slightly while trying to navigate the Academy's main entrance. "This is Earth's finest military specimen." The girl had just walked into a clearly marked sliding door, apparently not realizing it was motion-activated. She stood there for a moment, looking confused, then noticed the other students watching and gave a small, embarrassed wave. "Oh," she said, her voice carrying that peculiar human accent that sounded like she was constantly apologizing for existing. "Hi everyone, I'm Riley Thompson, from Earth." Obviously. I mean, you probably already knew that. The Earth part. Not the Riley part. Unless you did know that too, which would be weird but not impossible, I guess. Zaxon had seen more intimidating threats from particularly aggressive houseplants. "And this," Riley continued, holding up the cat carrier, "is Mr. Whiskers. He's my emotional support cat. The Academy said I could bring him because humans need emotional support, apparently. Which is embarrassing but also kind of true. So there's that." From inside the carrier came a sound that could generously be described as a meow, though it sounded more like a small engine having mechanical difficulties. "A cat," Zaxon said slowly, as if testing the word to see if it made any more sense when spoken aloud. "She brought a cat to Military Academy." "Emotional support cat," Riley corrected helpfully. "There's a difference. Probably. I mean, I assume there is. I didn't actually research it that much before coming here, which in retrospect was probably a mistake, but here we are." The assembled students stared at this rambling human with a mixture of confusion, amusement, and what might have been pity. Vex leaned over to whisper something to Crakes, who responded with a series of rapid antenna twitches that was definitely the insectoid equivalent of snickering. "Right," Riley said, clearly misinterpreting the silence as an invitation to continue. "So I'm here for the exchange program, and I'm really excited to learn about galactic military tactics and hopefully not embarrass my entire species too much. No pressure or anything." She tried to take a step forward and somehow managed to get the cat carrier's strap tangled around her own legs. The resulting stumble was so spectacular that 3 different species stepped forward to catch her before she face-planted on the Academy's pristine floor. "I'm okay," she announced from her slightly bent position. "This is normal. This is just how I move through space." Awkwardly. Zaxon couldn't contain his laughter any longer. This is perfect. This is absolutely perfect. The humans send their best and brightest, and they send us someone who can't walk through a door without supervision and travels with a pet. "Mr. Whiskers isn't a pet," Riley said, finally untangling herself and standing up straight. "He's a highly trained emotional support animal. Very professional. Show them your professionalism, Mr. Whiskers." The cat carrier remained diplomatically silent. "Okay, maybe he's shy," Riley admitted. "New environment and all. But he's really very capable at being a cat, which is his job." Commandant Thorne appeared as if summoned by the growing spectacle. "MS Thompson, I presume. Welcome to the Academy. I trust you'll find your accommodations suitable." "Oh yes, sir," Riley replied, snapping to what was probably meant to be attention, but looked more like she was trying to impersonate a particularly nervous scarecrow. "Thank you for accepting me into the program. I promise to do my best not to make humans look bad. More bad. Worse. I'll try not to make it worse." "I'm sure you'll do fine," Thorne said, though his tone suggested he was less than certain. "Your first combat simulation is scheduled for tomorrow. Nothing too strenuous, just a basic assessment." Zaxon's eyes lit up like someone had just told him Christmas came early. "Sir, if I may volunteer to partner with MS Thompson for her first simulation, I'd be happy to help her get oriented." The way he said help made it clear that his definition of the word was probably not found in any standard dictionary. "That's very thoughtful of you, Cadet Krell," Thorne replied, and there was something in his voice that might have been amusement. "Very well. You'll run a standard combat scenario tomorrow at 0800 hours." As the group dispersed, Zaxon couldn't stop grinning. Tomorrow, he was going to show this clumsy human exactly why her species should stick to whatever safe, non-threatening activities they did on their little backwater planet. It was going to be educational for everyone involved. Riley, meanwhile, was having an animated conversation with her cat carrier about finding their dormitory, apparently unconcerned about the fact that she'd just agreed to face the Academy's most feared cadet in combat. This was going to be easier than Zaxon had imagined. The next morning brought news that had the entire Academy buzzing with excitement. Commandant Thorne had announced a special multi-species combat tournament, with the winner receiving advanced placement in the Academy's elite command track. It was the kind of opportunity that came along once in a career, and every cadet wanted in. Perfect timing, Zaxon announced to anyone within earshot, which in the Academy's cafeteria was basically everyone. I'll demonstrate proper combat technique against the human, then proceed to dominate the tournament. It's like the universe is aligning to showcase Vorthak's superiority. Across the cafeteria, Riley was having breakfast with Mr. Whiskers, who had apparently been released from his carrier and was now perched on her shoulder like some sort of furry, judgmental advisor. She was reading what appeared to be a basic manual on Academy procedures and occasionally asking the cat questions. "Do you think non-lethal force only is more of a guideline or a hard rule?" she asked Mr. Whiskers, who responded with a sound that could have been a meow or possibly a tiny engine backfiring. "You're right, probably better to play it safe," Riley nodded seriously. "Don't want to get in trouble on day 2. Zaxon watched this display with growing amusement. The human was actually studying the basic rules manual. Not advanced tactics, not combat theory, but the equivalent of a children's picture book about not hitting other students too hard. It was almost too perfect. "Thompson," he called out, his voice carrying across the cafeteria with the subtle volume of a foghorn. "I hear you're participating in the tournament. Excellent. We'll have our little practice session, and then you can watch how real warriors handle combat." Riley looked up from her manual, blinking in confusion. "Oh, hi, Commander Krell. Actually, I think there might be some confusion. I'm just here for the basic assessment. I don't think I'm supposed to be in any tournaments." "Nonsense," Zaxon said, striding over with the confidence of someone who had never experienced doubt. "The tournament is open to all cadets. You're a cadet, albeit a temporary and largely decorative one. Therefore, you can participate." "I don't know," Riley said, looking genuinely uncertain. "I mean, I've never actually been in a real combat situation before. Unless you count the time I had to chase Mr. Whiskers around the apartment when he got into the catnip. But I don't think that's the same thing." "It's definitely not the same thing," Zaxon agreed. "But that's exactly why this will be so educational. You'll learn what real combat looks like, I'll get some light exercise, and everyone wins." "Everyone?" Riley asked. "Well, I win," Zaxon clarified. "You learn. Same thing, really." The other students were gathering around now, drawn by the spectacle of the Academy's top fighter, essentially challenging what everyone assumed was the galaxy's least threatening species. Kriex was already taking bets, and from the odds being offered, it was clear that Riley's chances were being rated somewhere between Snowball and a supernova, and completely impossible. "I suppose I could try," Riley said slowly. "I mean, what's the worst that could happen?" "Oh, you sweet, naive little human," Zaxon said, patting her on the head with one of his 4 hands. "You have no idea." The rest of the day passed in a blur of preparation. Zaxon spent hours in the Academy's advanced training facility, running combat simulations and perfecting his already flawless technique. He practiced with weapons without weapons, and in various environmental conditions. By evening, he was confident he could defeat Riley while blindfolded, using only his left feet, and possibly while solving mathematical equations in his head. Riley, meanwhile, spent the day in her dormitory room, apparently having a detailed conversation with Mr. Whiskers about Academy regulations and occasionally looking up something on her personal datapad. When other students checked on her, she seemed cheerful but increasingly nervous, and asking questions about the simulation systems and whether there were any rules about bringing emotional support animals to combat assessments. "She's actually worried about the cat," Vex observed to Q-Rakes as they watched Riley through the dormitory common area. She thinks her biggest concern is whether Mr. Whiskers will be comfortable watching her get demolished. Maybe we should warn her, Q-Rakes suggested, his antennae twitching with what might have been conscience. I mean, Zaxon's going to completely destroy her. It's not going to be pretty. Are you kidding? Vex replied. This is going to be the most entertaining thing to happen at the Academy all year. Besides, humans need to learn their place in the galaxy sometime. Better here than in actual combat. As evening approached, the betting pool had grown to include students from every species at the Academy. The odds were so heavily stacked against Riley that even putting a single credit on her offered 1,000 to 1 payout. Unsurprisingly, nobody was taking that bet. Well, almost nobody. I'd like to place a wager, Riley said quietly to Q-Rakes, who was running the unofficial betting operation. On yourself? Q-Rakes asked, his antennae nearly falling off from shock. Just a small one, Riley said, digging around in her pocket. How about 5 credits on me to win? The common area fell silent. Even Mr. Whiskers seemed to pause in his grooming to observe the moment. Riley, Q-Rakes said gently, I have to ask, do you understand what you're betting on? Because Zaxon is going to. I know what I'm betting on, Riley interrupted, her voice still quiet but somehow more certain. 5 credits. On me. To win. Q-Rakes looked around the room at the other students, who were all staring at this display of either incredible courage or complete delusion. With a shrug that somehow conveyed both admiration and pity, he made the entry. 5 credits on Riley Thompson to defeat Zaxon Krell, he announced. Payout of 5,000 credits if she wins. The room erupted in laughter, but Riley just smiled and walked back to her dormitory, Mr. Whiskers perched on her shoulder, both of them looking surprisingly calm for someone who had just bet on the impossible. Tomorrow was going to be very interesting indeed. The Academy's main combat simulation chamber was packed. Word had spread through the entire facility about the upcoming mismatch, and it seemed like every cadet, instructor, and maintenance worker wanted to witness what was being called either the most one-sided fight in Academy history or the most spectacular display of human optimism ever recorded. The simulation chamber itself was a marvel of technology, capable of creating fully immersive environments that could be adjusted for gravity, atmosphere, and terrain. For today's assessment, the system had generated a dense jungle environment, complete with towering trees, thick undergrowth, and the kind of humidity that made everyone's uniforms stick uncomfortably. Welcome to your basic combat assessment, Commandant Thorne announced over the chamber's communication system. The rules are simple, non-lethal force only, victory by incapacitation or surrender, and the simulation ends when one participant is unable to continue. Questions? Zaxon raised one of his 4 hands. Sir, what's the minimum time I should let this run? I don't want to end it too quickly and deny the observers their educational opportunity. Just fight to the best of your ability, Cadet Krell, Thorne replied, and there was definitely amusement in his voice now. I'm sure everyone will learn something valuable today. Riley stood at the opposite end of the chamber, looking around at the simulated jungle with the wide-eyed expression of someone who had clearly never seen anything like it. She was wearing standard Academy combat gear, which somehow made her look even smaller and more out of place than usual. Mr. Whiskers was sitting in the observation area, apparently unbothered by the crowd and busily grooming his paws. Ready when you are, Commander Krell, Riley called out, her voice carrying that same nervous but determined tone from the day before. All I'm ready, Zaxon replied, cracking his knuckles in a sound like small branches breaking. The question is whether you are. The simulation began with a soft chime, and Zaxon immediately sprang into action. His forearms moved in perfect coordination as he vaulted over a fallen log, rolled under a low-hanging branch, and began advancing through the jungle with the fluid grace of a born predator. This was what the Vorthak were designed for, quick, overwhelming force applied with precision and skill. Riley's response was somewhat less impressive. She appeared to panic almost immediately, stumbling backward and nearly tripping over her own feet. She looked around frantically, as if searching for somewhere to hide, then turned and ran deeper into the jungle with all the tactical awareness of a startled deer. "And there she goes," Zaxon announced loudly enough for the observers to hear. "Standard prey behavior. Flight response activated, logic disabled. This is exactly what I expected." The crowd in the observation area was already laughing. Even the instructors seemed to be having trouble maintaining their professional composure as they watched the human girl crash through the underbrush like a small, clumsy tornado. Zaxon pursued at a leisurely pace, allowing Riley to maintain her lead while he demonstrated proper jungle movement techniques. He moved silently through the vegetation, using his forearms to part branches without making a sound, his yellow eyes tracking Riley's obviously amateur progress ahead of him. "Notice how she's leaving a trail even a blind Blobian could follow," he commented for the benefit of the observers. "Broken branches, disturbed ground, and she's breathing so heavily I can hear her from here. Amateur hour." But as the chase continued, Zaxon began to notice some odd details. Riley's panicked flight seemed to be following a very specific route through the jungle, almost as if she was leading him somewhere. And her stumbling, while still loud and clumsy, was somehow managing to take her through areas where the undergrowth provided maximum cover from aerial observation. "Interesting," he murmured to himself. "Either she's incredibly lucky, or—" His thought was interrupted by Riley's voice, calling out from somewhere ahead. "Mr. Whiskers? Mr. Whiskers, where are you? I can't do this without you." Zaxon rolled his eyes. The human was actually calling for her cat, in the middle of a combat simulation. This was even more pathetic than he'd expected. But when he looked back at the observation area, Mr. Whiskers was nowhere to be seen. The cat had apparently wandered off, probably bored by the one-sided nature of the fight. "Focus, Zaxon," he told himself. "Time to end this embarrassment." He increased his pace, moving through the jungle with renewed purpose. Riley was just ahead, still crashing through the undergrowth like a small natural disaster. All he had to do was close the distance and the simulation would be over. But as he prepared to make his final approach, something felt off. Riley's movements were still clumsy and loud, but they were also somehow more purposeful. She was leading him toward a clearing where the afternoon sun would be directly in his eyes, and her route was taking them past several large trees that could provide cover for an ambush. "Wait a minute," Zaxon said, slowing down for the first time since the simulation began. "What exactly is she?" Riley emerged into the clearing ahead, spun around to face him, and for just a moment her expression was completely different. Gone was the nervous, overwhelmed girl from the academy corridors. In her place was someone who looked calm, focused, and oddly satisfied. Then the moment passed, and she was back to her normal, confused self. "Oh no," she called out, apparently noticing him for the first time. "You found me. I'm really bad at this hiding thing, aren't I?" But Zaxon was no longer listening. He was staring at the clearing around them, realizing that Riley had somehow managed to maneuver him into a position where he was silhouetted against the bright sun while she remained in shadow. Professional warriors didn't stumble into tactical advantages by accident. "Who are you?" he whispered. But Riley had already turned and was running again, this time with movements that looked suspiciously less clumsy than before. The next few minutes shattered everything Zaxon thought he knew about humans, combat, and his own superiority. Riley had stopped running. Instead, she was moving through the jungle with a fluid precision that made Zaxon's supposedly perfect technique look clumsy by comparison. She flowed around trees like water, stepped over obstacles without looking down, and somehow managed to be exactly where Zaxon didn't expect her to be at any given moment. "What the hell?" Zaxon muttered, trying to track her movement through the dense vegetation. "This is impossible. She's human. They don't move like that." "Oh, we don't." Riley's voice came from directly behind him. Zaxon spun around, all forearms moving in a defensive pattern, but Riley was already gone. A small branch fell from above, landing at his feet with a soft thud. "See, that's the thing about humans," Riley continued, her voice now coming from his left. "We're really good at letting people underestimate us. It's kind of our thing. Zaxon charged toward the sound, crashing through the underbrush with overwhelming force. He found nothing but empty air and the faint scent of human amusement. The stumbling around on my first day? Riley's voice was conversational now, coming from somewhere above him. That was me studying everyone's movement patterns. The nervous questions about academy rules, research. The basic manual I was reading, advanced tactical theory disguised as introductory material. Zaxon looked up just in time to see Riley drop from a tree branch, but not to attack. Instead, she landed gracefully behind him and was already moving again before he could react. And Mr. Whiskers? Riley continued. Well, let's just say he's been busy. Suddenly, the jungle simulation began to glitch. Trees flickered in and out of existence, the ground shifted beneath Zaxon's feet, and the environmental controls started cycling randomly through different atmospheric conditions. What did you do? Zaxon demanded, struggling to maintain his footing as the simulated reality warped around him. I didn't do anything, Riley replied, and now she was standing directly in front of him, no longer hiding or running. But Mr. Whiskers is very talented. Did I mention he's not actually a cat? As if summoned by her words, Mr. Whiskers materialized in the clearing. But he wasn't the small, fluffy creature that had been riding on Riley's shoulder. Instead, he appeared as a shimmering holographic projection, his form shifting and changing as advanced computer code scrolled across his translucent body. Greetings, Cadet Krell, Mr. Whiskers said in a voice that sounded like a supercomputer trying to be polite. I am Advanced Tactical AI Designation Whiskers, though I prefer my informal designation. I have been analyzing the Academy's combat simulation systems and have taken the liberty of making some modifications. You hacked the simulation? Zaxon asked, his voice rising to something approaching panic. Hacked is such an ugly word, Mr. Whiskers replied. I prefer to think of it as creative system optimization. The simulation is now operating under parameters that I believe will provide a more accurate assessment of human combat capabilities. The glitching stopped, and the jungle solidified around them. But now it was different. The trees were arranged in patterns that created natural choke points and ambush sites. The ground cover had been redistributed to favor stealth over direct confrontation, and the lighting had been adjusted to create shadows that seemed to move independently of their sources. This is cheating, Zaxon said, but even as he spoke, he realized how weak the protest sounded. Is it? Riley asked, moving closer with steps that made no sound on the jungle floor. Because I thought this was supposed to be a test of combat capability. And the thing about humans, Zaxon, is that we don't fight fair. We fight to win. Humans are supposed to be weak, Zaxon said, backing away from her steady advance. You're prey animals. Everyone knows that. Riley's laugh was soft and genuinely amused. Prey animals? Oh, Zaxon. You really haven't been paying attention to galactic history, have you? She moved faster than Zaxon's eyes could follow, covering the distance between them in a single fluid motion. Before he could react, she had somehow gotten behind him and applied a chokehold that utilized pressure points he didn't even know he had. Humans are apex predators, she whispered in his ear as his vision began to blur. We're descended from persistence hunters who could chase prey for days without stopping. We're omnivores with forward-facing eyes and the ability to throw objects with lethal accuracy. We developed tool use, fire, and agriculture before most species had even discovered counting. Zaxon tried to break free, but Riley's grip was precise and unbreakable. His forearms, which had always been his greatest advantage, were somehow being held immobile by one small human girl. And the really scary part, Riley continued, we're pack hunters. We work together. We plan, we adapt, and we never, ever give up. The world went dark around the edges of Zaxon's vision, and the last thing he heard was Riley's voice, still conversational and friendly. Oh, and Zaxon? The next time you want to pick on someone you think is weak, you might want to check their species' military record first. Humans didn't get invited to the Galactic Council because we're harmless. Zaxon collapsed to the simulated jungle floor, unconscious before he hit the ground. The silence in the observation area was so complete that you could have heard a pin drop. If pins made any noise when dropped in a room full of beings who had just watched their fundamental understanding of the universe get turned upside down. Riley stood over Zaxon's unconscious form, no longer the clumsy, nervous girl who had stumbled through the academy's doors yesterday. Her posture was confident, her movements economical, and her expression was that of someone who had just completed a routine training exercise rather than achieved the impossible. "Simulation complete," she announced calmly. "Cadet Krell has been incapacitated. I believe that constitutes victory under Academy rules." Mr. Whiskers materialized beside her, his holographic form flickering slightly as he processed data. "Indeed, Riley. Though I must say you could have ended this encounter approximately 4 minutes and 37 seconds sooner. Your efficiency rating needs improvement." "I was having fun," Riley replied with a shrug. "Besides, I wanted to make sure everyone got a good look at what just happened. Educational value and all that." Commandant Thorne's voice came over the communication system, and for the first time since anyone could remember, he sounded genuinely impressed. "Outstanding work, Cadet Thompson. Please report to the debriefing area. Medical team, please attend to Cadet Krell." As the simulation environment dissolved around them, Riley walked calmly toward the exit, stepping over Zaxon's still unconscious form without a backward glance. The crowd in the observation area parted before her like water, every species represented suddenly very interested in not making eye contact with the human. 5,000 credits. Kriegs whispered to himself, staring at his betting records. She just won 5,000 credits. "That's the least of our problems," Vex muttered, her 3 eyes wide with shock. "Do you realize what this means? Humans aren't the harmless prey species we thought they were. They're predators. Apex predators. And they've been pretending to be harmless this whole time." In the debriefing room, Riley sat across from Commandant Thorne, who was reviewing her academy application with new interest. "Riley Thompson," he read aloud. "Age 22, recent graduate of the Earth Military Academy, specialized in xenobiology and asymmetric warfare tactics, volunteer for the Galactic Council Integration Program." He looked up at her with raised eyebrows. "It says here that you requested assignment to assess alien combat capabilities and determine potential threats to human interests." "That's correct, sir," Riley replied. "Though I have to say, the assessment is going better than expected. Most species here seem to rely heavily on physical advantages and direct confrontation. Very predictable." "And Mr. Whiskers?" "Advanced tactical AI, latest generation. Earth Intelligence Service thought it would be useful to have backup, and the cat disguise was perfect. Nobody suspects a pet of being a military asset." Thorne leaned back in his chair, studying the young human with newfound respect. "You realize that your little demonstration has probably changed the entire political balance of this academy. Every species here now knows that humans are not to be underestimated." "Good," Riley said simply. "That was the point. Humans are tired of being dismissed as weak or primitive. We're not looking for a fight, but we want everyone to understand that we're not helpless either." "And Cadet Krell?" Riley's expression softened slightly. "He's not a bad person, just arrogant. This was probably good for him. Besides, I made sure not to cause any permanent damage. He'll wake up with a headache and a much better understanding of why humans are dangerous." As if summoned by her words, Zaxon appeared in the doorway, supported by 2 medical technicians, and looking like someone who had just discovered that everything he thought he knew about the universe was wrong. "Riley," he said, his voice hoarse but oddly respectful. "I owe you an apology. I underestimated you. I underestimated your entire species." "Apology accepted," Riley replied. "Want to grab lunch? I promise not to demonstrate any more human combat techniques. Pal, today." And Zaxon actually smiled at that, though it was still a bit shaky. "I'd like that. Though I have to ask, what else don't we know about humans?" Riley exchanged a look with Mr. Whiskers, who had resumed his normal cat appearance and was now purring softly on her shoulder. "Oh, lots of things," she said cheerfully. "For instance, Did you know that humans can survive in environments that would kill most other species? Or that we're one of the few species that can digest almost anything organic? Or that we're naturally resistant to most known toxins? I did not know that, Zaxon admitted. Most people don't, Riley replied. We prefer it that way. It's amazing what you can accomplish when people think you're harmless. As they walked toward the cafeteria, followed by a crowd of students who were now viewing the small human girl with a mixture of awe and healthy fear, Zaxon couldn't help but ask one more question. So what happens now? To the academy, I mean. Everything's changed. Riley considered this thoughtfully. I suppose everyone learns to work together as equals instead of assuming some species are superior to others. Humans have always been good at cooperation when we're not being dismissed or threatened. And the tournament? Oh, I'll probably win that too, Riley said matter-of-factly. Though I'll try to make it look a little more challenging this time. Don't want to completely demoralize everyone. Behind them, Mr. Whiskers opened one digital eye and purred what sounded suspiciously like laughter. The academy would never be the same, but perhaps that was exactly what it needed. After all, the galaxy was a dangerous place, and it was about time everyone learned that humans were not the harmless prey species they appeared to be. They were something far more dangerous, predators who had learned to hunt with their minds instead of their claws, and who were very, very good at making others underestimate them. Until it was too late.